pleasure to introduce you to Dana Rufolo, who is, has an impressive career as a practitioner and as a scholar as well. She's the founder of the Theatre Research Institute of Europe, based in Luxembourg, and she has published numerous articles on theatre and most specifically drama therapy. And she is the editor-in-chief of the London-based theatre magazine Plays International and Europe. So Dana has also received literary prizes for her creative work in the country of Luxembourg, and this has classified her as a national writer there, and her writings are stored at the Centre National de Littérature et Märchen Luxembourg for future researchers to discover and delve into. So today Dana will talk to us in her role as performer, poet and playwright, and will share with us her creative experience of writing I Am Viola da Gamba, and she will also talk to us about her latest work, Joyn, A Marriage Made in Mega Heaven. So this event is part of the Guthrie Drama Seminar Series in the School of Literatures, Languages and Cultures at the University of Edinburgh, and was scheduled, in fact, for 2019. So we're really grateful to the French Institute for allowing us kindly to reschedule and host the event. So needless to say, Dana, that after such a long wait, we're really thrilled and excited to have you with us today. So to you, Dana.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you to the French Institute and also to the Consul Général. And I'm very happy to be with you today. I just wish it were a bit less rainy so that there were, I'm sure you went through a lot of effort to get here. So, basically, I'm going to talk specifically about my narrative poetry, and that is distinguished from the work as an academic. I have a doctorate in theater and a DESS, French degree in art therapy, mixed media, so I specialized in drama therapy, but I've used all of the media, and I have published articles, academic articles, in both fields, theater and art therapy. But in this particular case, I'm not going to talk about my street theater. I'm not going to talk about myself as a editor of a theater magazine. Those are different caps, and street theater I do for Amnesty International Luxembourg, and that's very political. And the Theater Research Institute of Europe has a theater company concept, and that's called TRIE Justice, Theater Research Institute of Europe, TRIE. And I was under the illusion that people on the continent were going to say TRIE as try, so I had the clever idea of saying TRIE, Justice, as the name of the theater company, but it turns out that there's so many German-speaking people on the continent, and they say TRIE Justice, so I always have to do TRIE and in parentheses TRY, end of parentheses Justice. But those are just other things. I've also worked on the radio for 15 years in Luxembourg, a national radio station, doing programs about English literature. But the narrative poetry comes from a totally different source, and this is, I'm going to be looking at my own sheet, but you see on the board. So, what I'm talking to you, it says there, every one of us in this room values and yearns for more creativity in their lives. When I speak of me, I speak to you. These are probably impulses that everyone in the room who has ever desired to write or to be creative in some recognizable fashion has had the thoughts about, and sometimes we don't think deeply enough about our true impulses, or we don't respect them enough. At least I find that to be true for myself. So, sorry. Hello. So the most important thing for my narrative poetry, and that's totally different from the quote, intellectual work, is that I use an emotional impulse. And it's very, very private. It has to do with my family. And in fact, the emotional impulse comes, for example, in I Am Viola da Gamba of the Singing Building. My youngest child was taking cello lessons at the Conservatoire of Luxembourg. And every day I would take her, or every time she went there, I would go to the museum, the small museum they had with their collection of musical instruments. I understand Edinburgh has a more significant such of a museum. Berlin has a huge museum, but this was a very small one. But I became familiar with the objects there, the instruments there. And then in addition, there was announced that there was going to be a prize for poetry. And I said, oh, the Viola da Gamba, which is located in the instrument collection of the Conservatoire, for which I feel such an attachment because my daughter goes there, and it feels like a second home. That is going to be the model for the poetry I'm going to write. And of course, it did win a prize. Yeah. But the important thing is that it was an emotional thing. With Joyn, it was extremely emotional because it was the marriage on the top of a mountain of my eldest daughter. So we have 3 children. And we have 3 children. I didn't know that it was such an emotional experience until I sat down like 3 years after the event and wrote Joyn in a sort of state of reverie. And it's not totally realistic. It's surrealistic. It's been classified as surrealistic. It also won a prize. Then the future one that I'm going to talk very briefly about, which is going to be a site-specific one, and it's about comfort women who had to serve the soldiers, Japanese soldiers. Unfortunately, there's a nationality associated with who they were, but in World War II. And there are statues honoring these women now. But it wasn't because I saw the statues that I am going to be writing this site-specific performance. It's because my son's wife is a professor in America, and she just published a huge long paper on these comfort women statues and the history behind them and the meaning behind them. And I wanted to be able to bond with my daughter-in-law. So in each case, there's been an emotional impulse. And I think that's something that we have not been allowed. I don't even mean as women, but as human beings, we have not been allowed to recognize that a source of inspiration can be very close to our hearts. It can be emotional. And in each case, only in the poetry, that's how it began. Then, the next thing is what keeps me going on a project. So why did I continue going on these projects? Well, in each case, there was the illusion of an audience. What I mean by that is I believed that the performance could eventually see the light of day. And in fact, it's a very funny anecdote. Please come in. Very funny anecdote in Luxembourg, which is not a country you associate with culture for good reason. The conservatory director, when I published this poem, by the way, I do need a back, but I can circulate the I Am Viola da Gamba poem, and you can just pass it. I know you've seen it already, but you could just look at it, glance through it. I published this poem ages ago, I think in 2005, and I literally waited years until there was a new conservatory director, and I went and saw him within 4 days of him taking office and said, I have written a poem which honors the Luxembourg people and which honors the conservatory. Would you like to produce it? And he said, wonderful, wonderful, absolutely wonderful. I do not know if he would have had that reaction now that he has been in all these professional meetings for the last 5 or 6 years since the performance was done. But at that point, he was young, enthusiastic, and open-minded. So that was the illusion of an audience. For Joyn, we've had many offers: North Macedonia, Milan, and of course Luxembourg, the Mudam, which is a museum, and perhaps even the conservatory. I'm not sure yet, but I am, of course, open. Joyn is looking for places to be produced, and so if you're interested, or if you know someone who might be interested, don't hesitate to email me or talk to me or whatever. So that has to do with the illusion of an audience. I think that's very important for all of us. Do you write for yourself, or do you write for the hope that somebody else will read you and enjoy you? Do you develop a performance for yourself or in order to perform it? And then the illusion of an audience also falls into the home of cultural ambassadors. So Joyn has the London embassy in London, the Luxembourgish embassy in London is obviously a place that will want to have Joyn done under their auspices. All right, so next, going on to talent. What happens next in that creative process that I've undergone? There's a concentration on the task. And that is very interesting for someone who also writes academic papers and is an editor and writes radio reviews and the multiple forms of writing that one does, short stories. So that means an absolute, I remember when I wrote these, that there was an absolute absence of any sense of time pressure. It's like a reverie you go into and you forget that there is time. And you're just engaged in the process of creating this thing, this work of art. And the most important thing I found is that I have to, well, in my case, I have to have absolute silence. Some people perhaps don't. Or birds singing. It's a very good time of year to write on the continent in the month of May, because with all the birds are singing right next to my study. So, but otherwise, really silence. So there's just me and myself and the dictionaries and the computer and there's silence. And you have to fall in love with the creative process. And all that means that you can't let anything else, your baby or the dinner that you have to cook, or you can't let the watch be dominating you. You have to really fall in love with your project, and everything falls away. And in fact, I can't tell you where I wrote these poems. I can't really remember. I remember occasions when I looked up a word in a dictionary. That I remember, but where was I? I don't really remember. And most important for me, I don't know how it would be for, say, you, but is I cannot have that second self, that critic, watching me in the creative process. And I have allowed myself to put the stupidest things down on paper. Really embarrassingly stupid, simple, illogical things, and just left them there and come back and discovered that most of it was unusable and of no value whatsoever, but I understand my thought process. I understand what I was trying to do, and that brings me into that narrative poem yet again. So I never censor myself at all, and that was something I had to train myself to do. So that's basically the kind of who wrote these. And now we're going to turn to the three. We're going to start with I am Viola da Gamba of the Singing Building. And that would be, so we've done what motivates me, photo of the entire Viola da Gamba in its display case. All right, so in the Conservatoire of Luxembourg, there's this instrument, and okay, and that is the original Viola da Gamba. And in the little book which is being passed around, you also see photos of it. And that was what inspired me. How many of you are familiar with the Viola da Gamba? Do you play it or no? So it is normally a Baroque instrument, but this, very significantly, it says copie d'un viol baroque. And so it was constructed in the early 20th century based on a model of a Baroque instrument. And I don't know where that model is. I have never found that out. And the important thing is that somehow I associated with the country of Luxembourg, for which I am now a citizen. And the country of Luxembourg is a sort of humble country, but it's extremely successful in its smallness, and it works hard. People work hard in Luxembourg to achieve something, but they're not the great nations like Britain or France or even Belgium, which enormous colonies in Africa. So they're sort of humble. They're just a kind of, well, it was called Département des Forêts by the French. So when they owned it, so it seemed appropriate to think of Luxembourg as being represented by a viola da gamba that is a copy of a great Baroque instrument. And then I noticed, of course, and you can go on to the next video, please. Next close-up. I noticed that there was a head. I don't know if that's, you can see it very well. It's tiny, actually, when you look at the whole instrument, but there's a head of a female at the top of it, and her eyes are bound. And so I suddenly thought of the viola da gamba as a female. And it began to have a personality for me. And there's another one. The next, that shows from the side. And you see the carving. The eyes are underneath a bandage, but the bandage is very well sculpted, very well. And so you can still see the eyes underneath. And then the last one is the head as an entirety, and that would be the frontal one. And there it is again. There she is. There it is. So from that, I was able to construct this viola. I turned the viola da gamba into something living. And so I started working on the idea that it had a life. And what I did actually originally was I went to the director of the former director of the conservatory, and I asked what the history of the instrument was. I was able to trace it back to a Belgium firm, but no farther. So I was originally going to write the true story of it, of her journey into the glass case at the conservatory, but I ended up imagining her life. And that was kind of interesting, because during the process, having done all the work that I showed you about in terms of trusting myself, my creative self, so the absence of the intellectual self, the non-critical position, the allowance to do anything stupid on paper that I wanted, which I don't always allow myself to do. I felt that I had actually written her true story, the instrument's true story. I'm convinced, some part of me is convinced, that these things actually happened to that instrument. So her journey, its journey, became very real to me, and also to the people who listened to it. So I wrote the poetry, and that was step one. And it turned into a book. That was step two. And then, how did it get transformed into a performance? Where did the idea of a performance come from? Well, partly it was because there were these photos. And we can go on to the next photo, which is the photo by Jens Müller of the viola da gamba crying. It's very difficult to see maybe, but there is that isn't showing up very well. But there is a tear coming out from underneath the bandage on the left side as you're looking at it. And I don't know why the resolution isn't that good, but it is a tear. And she's crying because, and I'll read you now why she's crying. And so I started incorporating, this happens again, family. One of my son-in-laws is a photographer. He went to Cologne's school for photography and all use of light, including physics. He works at the physics end, but his hobby is photography. So he offered to take these photographs, and the photographs got into the picture. And I am now going to read, and then, of course, what happened is the music got into the picture, but we'll show you that in a minute. I'll read you now just a little bit from I Am Viola da Gamba. I'm going to read to you about the relationship with the viola da gamba and all the other instruments in the music collection at the Conservatoire de Luxembourg, because it has some of the rhythm of the earlier, kind of a jazzy rhythm. So there's always a music student who talks to the viola and asks, well, I'm looking at you, tell me about yourself, what was your life? So the music student says, Viola da Gamba, sing on. Sing to me of collective meaning, please. We are the distole and the systole of tempo. We are the blood of passion, time out of mind. We are the fluid pastness of present, the fastness of heat, the swiftness of swing. Makers of music made us during their dreams, made us the measure of all pleasure, of dance and drudgery, of hope and despair. We are the still middle of your throbbing world. We are the only ones hearing. Nobody hears the whole. Each one hears only a part. So that's kind of, for me, the theme. And that theme is, we are the still middle of your throbbing world. And why is there the tear? Well, the tear is because the Viola da Gamba goes through all kinds of adventures, and then eventually she ends up being given to a pastor whose wife is pregnant. And the pastor plays the Viola da Gamba for his wife, and then the baby is born. And I'm going to read you the two poems, and you'll find out why there is the tear. So the music student says, softly, speak softly, I've never felt this new language. And the viola answers, a boy is it then, a son, glory to God in excelsis. It's a pastor, don't forget. The child shall laugh at the sun in the morning. It shall be a bright ball, balancing just out of reach like faith, hovering between his splay-fingered hands, awkwardly sought and never caught. He shall gurgle with pleasure over this great yellow playmate, the sun, of course, and when night drops its curtain of mystery, my wife shall play him a tune on this handsome instrument and banish his fears. And of course, the handsome instrument is the Viola da Gamba. And so on. And the room was redolent with the young father's chuckles. The laughter of his new friend chimed in, and I felt the vibrating air crackle. The air is rent. I hear you howl at the moon, Viola. What crime have I committed that he should roughly remove me from my dark case and hold me to the window so that the sun's summer glare blisters his eyes so that they water his face? What crime have I committed that he should offer up a prayer to some awful pagan god of his, that if only I could have been the sacrifice, if only I could have blazed and left her mortal flesh still throbbing with milk and life? What fault was it of mine she died? So what happens, of course, is that the woman dies, which, since this was in the early 20th century, was not impossible, after childbirth. And the instrument is given away. It ends up thrown into a storage area on the other side of Luxembourg and eventually gets put into a glass case. And so there we are. We have the poems, we have the photographs. And now what do? What medium do I choose to use? Well, what medium would it be? It's about sound. So I found a brilliant young composer called Philippe Partridge in Luxembourg who wrote original music for the Viola da Gamba and composed original songs for the Viola da Gamba. And a young, again, brilliant and very famous, in fact, Ralph Mullenbrooks from Holland, Viola da Gambist, traditional Viola da Gambist, who has many CDs out. He was very excited about this project, and so he agreed to play the Viola da Gamba. And what happened is that Philippe wrote I didn't appreciate it at the time. I only really appreciate it now. He wrote music which stretched the range of this Baroque instrument, the 7-string Baroque instrument. And so Ralph Mullenbrooks, who was very happy to be playing Baroque music for his wonderful Viola da Gamba, for which he made CDs, was suddenly being challenged. And so there was this conflict between the two of them. And in the end, of course, it was Philippe's music that dominated, but Ralph was not particularly diplomatic about it, about the fact that he was being pushed and stretched. The viola recitative, and that is kind of what is the theme song for the Viola da Gamba. It represents, if you will, the personality of the Viola da Gamba, and it's repeated. There is a brief video you're going to see, and it's repeated throughout the piece. So it's actually completely original music, and it's only written for this piece. And actually, I think what should happen next to the Viola da Gamba, this I Am Viola da Gamba, is that it should be brought into an operatic. I think somebody should take it and turn it into opera. What we did do is, again, family and friends. That's really all we have in this world, and friends who are like family, usually. So his wife was an opera singer, so he asked me to compose songs in addition to what's in the published book, and I did. I composed 5 songs, and they were sung intermittently between the piece, and so that will be the next one. So they're songs, so the words are very different from if they were poems, and they don't have the same intensity as the poetry does. And so then we had the score. We had everything. Then we had the photographs, and Jens Müller, the photographer, took more photographs so that they were also interspersed during the performance. And the performance consisted of the Viola da Gamba, which was myself, the music student, who was an Eastern European English-speaking person who lived in Luxembourg and who was an actress, and Ralph Mullenbrooks, who was the Viola da Gambist, and in addition we had the hurdy-gurdy, because Philippe wanted a hurdy-gurdy, and the opera singer. And behind everyone was a screen like this with the poems projected, and sometimes also the images. So the image of the tear coming out of when the Viola da Gamba was sent rudely out of the pastor's home, or an image of the Viola da Gamba being left to kind of on the side of a road waiting to be impounded and brought into the country of Luxembourg, has a national writer who doesn't write in one of their official languages, which is Luxembourgish, French, and German. So in case people didn't quite understand, they were able to read the poem. And so I think that's the next one, what was projected on the back screen. Images shown during the I Am Viola performance were just, so that was how it started. You can just kind of scroll through and then let them look at the photographs especially. Just scroll even faster, I think. There, that's the Viola da Gamba. Okay, and then that is the room in which the instrument is one of several others under a glass case. And then that's a close-up of the viola. This is the tear. This is the Viola da Gamba being abandoned. Oh, this is the tear. Oh, that's why it wasn't the right one. This is the tear. There you see it much more clearly. The other one was just the face. This is the tear. So she's crying, and apparently Jens told me it took him hours to get a tear that would stay exactly right on the photograph. It was not so easy. And the tear is more round than it should be. It should be more oval, actually. But there we are. There's the Viola da Gamba being ridden away, I think into Luxembourg. And that's actually my daughter, one of my daughters, on her horse. So it's kind of, again, I'm telling you that for me, the source of strength is emotional. And there's the Viola da Gamba being laid against a tree. Nobody wants it anymore. And I don't know if there are any more photographs after that. Can't remember. There she is being hidden away in a dark room, which is where all the instruments were put before they were put on display. Forgotten about. And there, now, being shown to the public. But in the poem, it's extremely important that it is being displayed under glass, so you can't touch it. And it can't play for you, and it can't reach out of the glass. In fact, I think the poem finishes with, I rest in my case, caesura, and the idea is that it's like she's being buried. Like, was it Sleeping Beauty, where there's this glass case? Traditionally, it's a little bit like that concept. Yeah, so that was what the people saw when they watched the performance. So we had a cue sheet as well. I mean, those of you who are in theater are quite familiar with that. And what was really important is that I got the idea, we didn't have a director, so we all worked together. And the cue sheet, the idea was that there would be lights, different color lights. For the hurdy-gurdy had a yellow light. The Viola da Gamba and the music student had a white light. The spotlight, and the Viola da Gamba as a human, the human Viola da Gamba. The person playing the viola, so Ralph, had a blue light, and the opera singer was in a reddish-pink light. So when there was spotlights all over the stage going on, which really added to the performance. So that was just the kind of cue sheet that we worked out. That was, of course, the cue sheet for what you just saw before, so that there was a smooth transition from poem to poem and image to image. And now I'm going to play you a 5-minute video of the performance, which isn't of particularly high quality. Again, reality intrudes, so the person who had been hired to film with 2 cameras from 2 different positions it was an actor, as well, and he had gotten locked into his changing room, locked into it, when he was supposed to be there. So my daughter, one of my daughters, took over and did some of the photography. So in the end, it's less professional, but it still gives you an idea of do you want?
I too have sat blindly waiting. I too have heard rivers into existence. Clouds. I am deposited in Luxembourg, a country unknown. It is a customs office, a shut-eyed building modestly turning its back on the road. I hear a lookout tower shout, "Look out!" as my leather case crashes open. I hear gurgles and imagine a river, a passage between 2 lands, smooth as a lump of rosin, slow flow. I dream the puckered surface shot through with wavering images of wings, birds, clouds, sky. Now, who are you, Viola da Gamba? This new country's new morning's new light finds me covered with petals. I imagine miniature hyacinths. They tickle, giggle, zip, giggle, presto! A tree above me released its flower shower in the cache of night, and I am the low point onto which the petals settled. mortals who cannot sing and scarcely speak, ignorant of our meanings, can we grasp yours?
I nourish the spirit, not the body. I have nothing to say. I sing, sang, sung. Take up my bow and play. This hyacinth, forget the mortal flesh, and think of the hyacinth that wilts and browns.
Fare thee well, object.
I have strummed my tune up to and into the moment of doneness, as it was in the beginning. Leave me! Let me live out my silence in silence. No, I am the still middle. I am resting strings in a throbbing world. No, there is no one knowing the whole. Each one hears only a part. I rest my case. I rest in my case. Caesura?
The Viola da Gamba had a kind of renaissance very recently, and there was an article written in French in the Objet du Mois, and I'm very happy about that, by the Centre National de Littérature Luxembourg, and Mersch, Luxembourg, and they kind of refound the manuscript, the original manuscript for I'm sorry, I'm talking to you by bending over. They found the original manuscript of I Am Viola da Gamba, which my other daughter had drawn a picture on, and which they collect everything I do. And so they decided to refeature it, and I want to just read you something because I'm really happy for that. I have it here. And I'm just going to read you this. So this is 2019, I think, 2020, whatever, very, very recently. And she wrote, now I'm not a native French speaker, but I'm proud of my French. But I have an accent, I apologize. But I will be reading this in French, because she wrote it in French. I Am Viola da Gamba retient avant tout l'attention parce que l'instrument exposé au Conservatoire y est présenté comme un symbole de Luxembourg, tel que l'a compris l'auteure luxembourgeoise d'origine américaine. Étant une simple copie, la gambe incarne une beauté humble, telle que les Luxembourgeois devraient considérer comme un atout majeur de leur pays. And I really appreciate that because she had to come to that understanding on her own. So I'm really happy that that message passed, and so recently in time as well. Okay, so now having made that little appendix, we're going to continue with the body, which is Joyn 14. That will be 14. So it all started, I know we all hate to watch family photos, but this was the start. A very tall mountain that took every wedding guest 2.5 hours to climb up, called the Meglis near Zurich in Switzerland. And that was Jens when they were young. They don't look like that anymore. And that was Aliana when she was young. And the wedding must have meant a lot to me. All my sisters came and their children, and it was a very, very emotional, must have been very emotional. At the time, I didn't feel any emotions, but I must have been feeling them. So you want to go on to the next photo. So that's the setting. That's very important. Those are the people, and then the next photo is of the church, and that's also represented. There was a little church in Meglis-Alp, and that's the church, and those are the wedding guests headed into the church. And you see this wonderful mountain scenery, and in fact, there was quite a steep and dangerous walk, both up and down. And then there was also a Gasthaus, so a little house where we all spent the weekend. So the wedding was on Saturday, and we slept, all of us, in that Gasthaus and had a breakfast together and then went down. And so this is the real setting. And you can go there. I think during COVID they were closed, but you could really go there, and you could get married there, or you could just go there and have a wonderful hike. It's quite charming. They don't know anything about this poem, by the way, yet. So a couple years afterwards, I started writing about it. And I wrote about it from my own perspective because I had felt very left out somehow from the experience. I had felt like I was just observing. Aliana, I don't know how it is in your culture. And in my culture, I would have had more to do with the marriages of my children. But each of my children each of our three has gotten married without any input from us whatsoever. And so I wasn't at all involved in this. I was just a guest of honor, perhaps, but I was just a guest. And so I kind of wrote it from my perspective, and that perspective became the perspective of someone called Blue Sky Woman. It will get published. I want it to be published as a program so that people can, when it's performed, people can read it, because the performance doesn't include all the poems, of course. It includes the poems which are more active, dramatically active. So there we are. And I'm now going to read to you so that you know later on, actually, so that you can later on recognize when it is performed in the films, you'll have already heard it once. So I wanted it to be more jazzy. I wanted the rhythms to be more internal and tuk, 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 nothing regular. And that's actually why in the end I went in the direction of not music, not sound, but in the direction of dancers. And there are 4 dancers involved in this project. Very important to the project, actually, by now. So you're going to be hearing an actor performing a Gargoyle Face. And Gargoyle Face is a border control man between Switzerland and Germany. And we had as a guest the future husband of one of my daughters, who was Chinese. And he looked physically different than the rest of us. And he was sitting in the back of one of the 4 or 5 wedding vehicles. But sure enough, the border control man saw him and made him come out. And we spent more than 2 hours at the border, anxiously, while he checked every single, and called back to Germany, every single border proof that he was legally in Germany, that he had a job in Germany, that he had insurance in Germany, that he had the right to be there, the Swiss, he wasn't trying to get into Switzerland in order to live in Switzerland, and on and on and on. And so Gargoyle Face is portrayed very uncomplimentarily, and I'm going to read what you will be hearing. Where did we start? Did we start with Gargoyle Face's flatulence? Blue Sky, okay. I'll start this. I'll start with Blue Sky Woman. So Blue Sky Woman, who dropped from the sky so as to be along for the ride, sees as it happens that border controlling's a risky business, and she sees the focus in the man in his busyness, Gargoyle Face himself. Gargoyle Face has flatulence, dyspepsia, ants in his pants, and no home life to mull over. His nose is patina, his cheeks are brass, his beard is green, his eyes are brown. He jerks his thumb just like a clown, his face is twisted in a frown. He spits the words that crown the frown. Stop! Roll over! He signals to one of the wedding party, singling out an orange-dyed man, Schengen, pronounced Schengen, of restrained foreignness. Who asks, why this disparity? It is my job, Gargoyle's tin words gush, to irritate you just as much as I am able, and I am able, if I must, to rub your passport into dust. I am Gargoyle the Great. Tremble at my granite feet. Offer me nice franks to eat. Cantilever my obstinacy with your great hate. However, do not defy the need to heed. You stand on the wrong side of my gate. And so on and so forth. You'll be hearing the actor doing that, but you might not hear every word. So I have now read that part to you, and I am also going to read the marriage scene, which is played by the same actor who plays Gargoyle Face when we do the dancing, which you will see. Okay, now, marriage in a stony alpine church that smells like wood smoke. The alpine chapel speaks to its silent occupants. My walls are granite, my roof is slate, the floor you tread is brown and red stone, in bed with slurry, hard as rock, enduring ages. My walls are lined with stations of the cross to remind you contemplatively of suffering. My windows 4 are transparent boundaries to the wild world. My clear windows invite the wilderness to stay outside and you to stay inside. The pastor speaks, behold, today, a young man and woman stand before you, asking your mouths for blessings, your hearts for healings, and me for symbols with eternal meanings. Behold, I lift up these climbing ropes, for we all know these two are mountain climbers who defy gravity time and again, with dynamic ropes and abseil techniques and knowledge of each other's intentions that speaks as loud as words. Take these ropes, both of you, not your ropes, each of you. Dawn and her honey moon knotted the ropes, one in her way, one in his way, and neither in each other's way. The pastor held the ropes aloft. Behold, an alpine butterfly for her, and a clove hitch. You are hitched, young man. Laughter überall. The walls did echo. And now the rings. They draw a circle around jointure. You are now united. Laughter überall. The walls did echo. And this is, of course, unfortunately, very religious. You might think that I have some kind of religious streak in me, but there's a drunken scene which afterwards, which is totally different. But I just read you those poems because you're going to see the dancers performing to those poems, so that you've heard the words already once. All right. So next is the All right, so there we are. It's the same structure as last time. We have the poems, we have the emotional motivation, we have the poems. They won a prize in Luxembourg, but yeah, I put them away. I forgot about them. I totally forgot about the poem. And then, I was invited to a theater festival. This is what. I was invited to a theater festival in Cluj, in Romania. The most important theater being done in the world probably is being done in Romania. If you believe that theater should be political, if you believe that theater is important when it's a response to memory of dictatorship, even more than Spain, but certainly in Romania and in Eastern Europe in general, the most incredible theater is being done. You are in a theater town. Some of you may be in theater, so this will be interesting for you to know. And I was invited there, and I really had totally forgotten about Joyn. Like so many works of mine that have been put in a drawer, I'd forgotten about it. And I'm going to pass this around. So this is a review of the Cluj Festival of 2018, autumn 2018. And there was a costume designer called Lucien Boskatian, who actually is also a fashion designer, so he has some fashion shows that go to London. But he's a costume designer, and he designs also for Gabor Tompa, who is the president of the European Federation of Theater, of European Theaters. And but I knew nothing about him. And I saw these costumes. I saw this play. It's a very tragic play. The Eastern Europeans have many stories, and so do the Frisians, for that matter, I found out, of people, I don't know if you have it, of building needing a living creature to be buried alive in its wall, in a wall, so that it will stay strong and upright. No, you don't know this myth. Does anyone know this myth? Well, no. Okay. It turns out that it's also a Frisian custom. I just found that out a few days ago, because we'll be talking about that tomorrow in respect to a review of a play that was done in Hamburg, of a play by based on Theodor Sturm, the author. But in this play, so there is Master Manoli, it's called, and this girl, this woman, is the wife of the architect for a new church. I'm sorry again, religious, but that's the play. And the church kept falling down. And this may be based on historical fact, for all I know. Maybe there was various earthquakes, and they finally said that something living had to be a human had to be buried in the church. And Master Manoli is desperate. He's ambitious, and he's desperate to have this church completed. It's going to be a glorious church, and it's going to bring him glory. And they all agree, the constructors agree, that the first human who appears at the chantier, I don't know what the English word for that is. What's the English word for chantier?
Construction site.
Construction site, thank you. Was going to have to be buried in the church. And sure enough, it was the wife of the architect, Manoli. And he'd given his promise. And she so trusts her husband that she goes where he says, she stands where the wall is going to be. And she allows herself to, it's a really very dramatic theater. She allows the wall to be up to about here, before she starts panicking. And even so, she kind of believes what they tell her. And Lucien this is her before she's being buried, but she's wearing a coat that has black and white. You see it, but very light, but she takes it over herself. It has little black and white squares in it, and they used a Q8 system to make her dissolve into the wall. And I'm going to pass this around. If you had said, what have you written? I would have said, this play or whatever, short stories, whatever. I said, I'm trying to write a novel. But I had totally forgotten. But when I saw these costumes, I said, this is the costume designer for Joyn. I gave him the script, and he was totally enthusiastic. He's agreed to do the work without getting any private pay, because he considers it hugely exciting artistic job. So we're in constant communication. And he's over in Romania, of course, and we've all been separated because of COVID. But it's the same thing. What artistic medium goes with these poems? And so it was dancers. And which dancers? Where do I find the dancers? And I remembered that one of my very good friends, also Romanian by chance, who lives in Vienna, that her daughter was a professional dancer and was working in Dessau in Germany. And it turned out that Anna is the principal dancer of a group of 4 who are dancing for this piece. And her partner is also in one of the 8 dancers for the Dessau Unhapless Theater dance company. And he's British, his name is Martin Anderson, and he desperately wants to become a choreographer. He loves choreographing, and he's getting a bit older. He's 30-something, a bit older. And he is constantly taking ibuprofen. Is that what you call it in English as well? Yeah. He's taking it constantly for the aches and pains he has. And he just, every day, and he just really wants to become a choreographer. And so Anna was the dancer. She's the daughter of a friend of mine. My friend gave her the script. She said, "Wow," Martin said, "Yeah," and we ended up getting a large grant from Luxembourg for us to go to Dessau, which gave us the ballet rehearsal stage to rehearse and develop the project. And there were 2 actors and myself as an actor, but as Blue Sky Woman, not a very important role. But the 2 actors, a young British person who grew up in Edinburgh, maybe Conrad Williamson. Does anybody know him? He lives in London now. He works in London as an actor and other jobs. And an Italian actress who studied in London. It's back in Milan. So they became the actors. So that's how it started. And then this is about the Unhapless Theater Dessau. So this is one of the performance places. You might just leave it on the picture. This isn't the theater, of course. But this is one of the outdoor performance places in Dessau, Germany, which is in Saxon-Anhalt in Germany, not far from Berlin, and a former Eastern European country, East German country. So they danced there, and he was interviewed. You want to scroll down, please? Thank you. He talks about the project here. He says that he had wanted to do a poetry anyway, and then when he saw the script, he wanted to do it. And then we'll go down to his biography. Can we enlarge it so I can read? But that's, of course, what he said about me, but I don't have any of you speak German, so we'll go down. That's the troupe, those are the dancers. And there's Martin. Martin Anderson began his dance career with the Royal Ballet School in London in 2001. And then he went to the Elmhurst School for Dance, which was associated with the Birmingham Royal Ballet. And in addition, he danced with, he did work for dancing and with the Royal Opera House and the Elmhurst School for Dance and the Swansea Ballet Russe. And then he was with the Slovakian National Ballet, which is where he met Anna. And in Kiel, in Germany, he had been there before. And as of 2018, he's up in the Unhapless Theater. Well, Unhapless Theater, but it's been declined there. It's in declination. It's Unhapless Theater. And so they allowed him to start choreographing for him. So there we were. Suddenly we had 4 dancers, Martin and Anna. Martin as a choreographer, and then 2 other dancers from the company, Fergus, who was actually from Australia, and Moe, who's actually from Japan. They're all dancing in Dessau, in Germany. And so now, so what happened then is all these people from all over got together using the grant to fly them in, and we met in July. So this is really now. We met in July. All of us were vaccinated. We didn't use masks when we were together in the ballet rehearsal space. So what you're seeing now is the development, research and development stage. We're not in costume. Lucien has not yet made the costumes. I don't have enough money. He still needs 5,000 euros just to make the costumes, and his work would have been like 10,000. That's he's giving to us. So what you're going to be seeing when you see the videos is not particularly, we're not in costume. We don't have lighting. Yeah, you have to realize that. That's Anna and Martin. Martin's working with her. He was very hard on her. He was really demanding, working on her, creating her roles. So he's not actually dancing there. He's holding her so she learns what she has to do. He does dance a bit, but he basically was doing the choreography. And the next one, is there another one? Oh yeah, and this is, of course, now we're getting into the more interesting part, which is how the actors on stage are interacting with the dancers. So this is a still showing Conrad acting, the Edinburgh person living in London, and the dancers dancing. And the remarkable thing is that at the end of our 2 weeks of research and development, we actually arrived at a complete choreography and a complete directorial. The director is from Luxembourg. He's an American with a tiny little theater company there, Eric, and he's totally theatrical. So he's viewed the poem as theater, and that was very interesting. He made really dramatic scenes out of clusters of poems. So we had these two things fusing together, and the result is, I think, quite interesting. So now we're going to show you some of the results. This is a teaser. Remember, don't expect costumes, don't expect lighting, don't expect a stage. You're in a ballet rehearsal space. This is the kind of first teaser that we've done.
The pastor speaks.
Behold, today a young man and young woman stand before you, asking your mouths for blessings, your hearts for healings, and me for symbols with eternal meanings. Behold, I lift up these climbing ropes, for we all know these two are mountain climbers who defy gravity time and again with dynamic ropes and abseil techniques and knowledge of each other's intentions that speak as loud as words. Take these ropes, both of you. Not your ropes, each of you.
Dawn and her honey, moon, knotted the ropes. One in her way, one in his way, and neither in each other's way.
The pastor held the ropes aloft. Behold, an alpine butterfly for her, and a clove hitch. You are hitched, young man.
Laughter overran, the walls did echo.
And now, the rings. They draw a circle around jointure. You are now united.
Laughter overran, the walls did echo. Shall we find some men and dance with the bride and groom?
What? Do my ears deceive me? You said gloom?
Gloom? Who talked of gloom? Groom! Groom, bride and... Will you take a look at the magnificent broom blooming everywhere?
in July. Where the sun is, the dancers are also nearby.
Flow meadows, flower power, flower fragrance, flower grace, crevice, cliff, craggy rock face. Excuse me, flower, have you the hour?
Not at all. My timepiece is burning on the mantle of my fireplace, and I wear no special mantle for your hike today. The sun is my constant flame.
Megalosaurus, in its one revolution around the sun, is home to 100 flowers. See them gyrate in concentric spirals towards the one who lights their fire. They want the shadows to swarm away. Their flagrant plant life obliterates the blades of grass. June bugs, cocoons, beetles, death's head moths, stick insects blending in with twigs. There is no enswathed ground to speak of. All is a red and purple carpet of petals running. No, jogging around obstacles. Up to the Megalosaurus.
Yes, 'tis true, blue sky woman. Take what you see. If there is one thing that rarely deceives, it is a pair of eyes.
We are the seed plots of theodicy. We are the herbs, the shrubs, and the trees. We are the clovers. We are the bees. Ours, roots of genitival immortality. Our stamens flaming in rich air inflammatory. We are the contours of your odyssey. Trample on us, stumble our sepals. The stamina of the non-humans brings us return. Leave us a home for your homelessness, your existential angst. You wanderers trudging purposefully, sum up towards high glee. Justified forsakers of low ground, soak your sleeves and your hands in one bright day.
None of you has ever seen anything like this before, really not. Yeah, so that's the idea. I mean, we did develop something new, and of course we have to now place it in front of the world on a platter. So if any of you know of venues that might welcome our presence, do let me know. Why don't we just go on and show you a few more extracts? So I understand that in one case it was an emotional thing to see these dancers of incredible flexibility, interpreting the words. But we have a few more things to show you from Joyn.
Earth cascade of the Rhine. One land divides into two geopolitical states of being. If one is greening, the other has elected to be in pea brown. If one is Europeaning, the other has voted for folk and town. A wedding procession of Volvo, BMW, Mercedes, and Golf rolls at 10 kilometers per hour towards the pea brown and a dangerous Gargoyle Face inspector of passports and other vital signs. Blue sky woman who dropped from the sky so as to be along for the ride sees as it happens that border control is a risky business and sees the focus to the men in his business. Gargoyle Face himself.
Gargoyle Face has flatulence, dyspepsia, ants in his pants, and no home life to mull over. His nose is patina, his cheeks are brass, his beard is green, his eyes are brown. He jerks his thumb just like a clown. He spits the words that crown that brow. Stop! Roll over! He signals to one of the wedding party, singling out an orange-dyed man, Schengen, of restrained foreignness, who asks, why this disparity? It is my job! Gargoyle's 10 words gush to irritate you just as much as I am able, and I am able, if I must, to rub your passport into dust! I am Gargoyle the Great! Tremble at my granite feet! Offer me nice frags to eat! Cantilever my obstinacy with your great hate. However, do not defy the need to heed. You stand on the wrong side of my gate. I detect a foreigner mixed in this gaggle of wedding guests. Disembark that virgin white vehicle absurd with ropes of forget-me-nots and Queen Mary honeysuckle. Tell me who you be.
Schengen spoke in his impeccable English. I am a wedding guest. I am invited.
Gargoyle Face pours forth a stream of scorn, intestinal fermentations and flailing root canals. I have no interest as to where you are going. I must know where you come from. Name your very vidi vanquished. Gargoyle's voice is ash and soot. It sears the throat to hear it.
Schengen is the beloved of Uza, the bride-to-be sweet young sister. His papers are creamed and thick, with comestible-looking compostellas, round and crisp. He owns francs enough to fill a charcuterie, and faith enough to surmount moving mountains. Schengen has nothing to fear. And besides, Uza is a UN employee, and so above the law of the land. However, it lies. And besides, their love is true.
Blue Sky Woman is obliged to be shy, silent, pelting glances at those belted behind glass. She observes the sea, unseen.
Do you know where you are, boy?
Schengen puzzles. I pledge allegiance to the flag and to the republic for which it substitutes. One nation under God invisible, with freedom and justice for all.
No, this is not America. We are a democracy.
God save the king.
Frankly, no.
Beethoven, Usa whispers. Think.
Oh, they undivided. Europa.
No, sort of. Almost there.
Switzerland has 23 cantons. They are enshrined in chocolate miniatures, its principal export.
Not bad. Almost there. Follow me.
Usa and Schengen dare defy, for they are scared and find no way to disobey.
And then I know we're going to be ending this very soon. But we're just going to finish with one more video, then you'll really get a feeling for the whole thing. And I'll spend just 3 or 4 minutes talking about the new project. This is...
Our far-sighted visions overlook the detail of our tangled sprouts, our clumps of earth, our clutches of maggot eggs, larvae that clump and cling, our roots that sweep, the breeze that strums, the birds that hum and squeak and speak.
So that's kind of what I'm going to show you about Joyn. And it's a work, well, it's a work that's been set. We need costumes, we need lighting, and we need performance spaces, which is going to be the next step. And I'm going to conclude for just very briefly by discussing the future project, which I'll be doing after Joyn has gone around a bit. And it's a site-specific project, and it's about the comfort women of World War II. And they happen to have been Japanese, but that's not really my interest. I'm not interested. In fact, I'll be working very, very hard. I would have opened this up, in fact, to have a discussion with you about the matter. So do we have something about the comfort? We have. So basically, in 3 places in the world, that's not quite true, but we'll just say that for now. In 3 places in the world, there are statues of women, not the women, but women who could have looked like the women that were used by the Japanese soldiers in World War II, so that they could have comfort. I won't go into more details. But paper was written about, it's come to worldwide attention. You may have already heard about this. I think it's getting more and more momentum, but it just so happens that my daughter-in-law wrote a paper that won a American National Sociology or Cultural Studies prize for a paper she wrote about the comfort woman. So again, I didn't actually approach it politically, although, as I say, for Amnesty International, I have done street theater with a political mind. But I actually, again, it was my heart. I wanted to do something to bond me with my daughter-in-law. And so I picked this up, and these are the photographs now of where it is. So it will be a site-specific project. This is in San Francisco. This is a column of 3 women holding hands, 3 or 4, I can't see, and another one. They were all comfort women. And this was a response to the kind of that story about the political history. This is in Hong Kong, a statue in downtown Hong Kong, again, of the comfort women, a sort of artistic impression. And the third one is in Seoul, in Korea. And that's the third site. So the work I'm working on, I haven't really started yet at all, but that will be performed in these sites. And this is what I'm going to conclude today by opening it up to you. First of all, I'm just going to read you. I just wrote this, and this is like a working poem. And the thing is, at this time, I have to make sure that the language is extremely simple, because there will not be a closed space, there will be wind, there will be traffic noise, there will be passers-by. It's much more like street theater. So this is just something that came to me, and I'll just read it to you, just to show you my working method. I don't know, after I had been swimming, I was coming home, and I thought, oh, here it is, something. And she stood as still as a statue. It was so. She did not know why she stood as still as a statue. It was just unjust. So.